you could talk about problems and solutions. You could talk about existing solutions and yours as an alternative. I use them very often for like a hook or a transition that you just can't get out of a customer's voice.
If you're running paid social ads, you'll know that creative is the variable. Knowing what creative is working, what's not, and how to develop more winning ads is so dependent on understanding actual creative performance at a granular level. At Fly Performance, we use motion for all of our creative reporting. It's frankly transformed our ability to develop, find, and scale more winning ads, driving more revenue and more profit for our clients. Motion empowers your creative and marketing teams with the data they need to make the right decisions through visualized and easily digestible, customizable reporting that clearly identifies the key drivers of creative performance, taking the guesswork out of creative to generate more revenue from your paid social ads. If you're ready to learn how the best DTC and e-commerce brands use Motion to ship winning Meta, TikTok, and YouTube ads, book a demo today or create a free account at motionapp.com. Even better than that, Motion offers a monthly subscription plan so you can dodge all those annoying annual contracts. It's a common phrase in e-commerce that creative wins the click, your landing pages seal the conversion. If you want to convert more paid traffic, you need to own and optimize your post-click experience. One of the best solutions we've found at Fly Performance has been Format. Format's drag and drop no-code builder lets your marketing team create funnels the same way they create ads. From dynamic landing pages to targeted PDPs, custom carts, Format enables you to convert more paid traffic by experimenting and owning your post-click experience. Learn more at formatcommerce.com. That's Format, F-E-R-M-A-T, commerce, C-O-M-M-E-R-C-E.com. Managing your influence and creator marketing doesn't have to be a headache. At Fly Performance, we use Incense. Incense is a one-stop shop to discover and collaborate with creators to produce UGC content for organic social and increase your advertising performance through whitelisted ads on Instagram and Spark ads on TikTok. After trying several other solutions, we landed on Incense, and it's proven to be by far the best platform for streamlining and simplifying the entire process from discovery, briefing, launching ads, and managing payments. Our teams and clients love it. If you're working with influencers and creators to produce user-generated content for your brand or business, you should definitely check them out. You can learn more by going to incense.pro. That's Incense, INSCNSE.pro.
Hi, Dave. Welcome to Bite Sized. Excited to have you on the podcast. I was just saying before we started recording, from the content you put out there, you're a very intelligent guy, lots of knowledge. So I'm hoping I can impart as much of your wisdom through this podcast as possible. But welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you on.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we just caught up briefly before the podcast, and I've been following you for a while and the content that you put out there on Twitter or X and LinkedIn. But for anybody who doesn't know you, just give you a 5-minute career story, kind of where you started and what you're currently doing at Bambu.
Yeah, so I'm about a 15-year veteran in e-commerce. I actually started just at the very end of college. My dad had a backpack brand and he wanted to start selling it online. And I logged into Google Analytics and AdWords. I think it was like 2008 or 2007 even. And I was immediately kind of bit by the concept that I could sit here and model out the cost per click, and I could model out the conversion rate, and I could find an ideal kind of amount of spend that would maximize my profit for this. And this was literally 2007. And I remember the first time discovering it, staying up till like 1 a.m, being like, this is awesome. I think for many of us that discovery of like, oh, you could just make money online. That honestly is what got me about e-commerce, is that these direct inputs that you can make, and you can create a somewhat predictable output to it. And then, so since that point, I've been in e-commerce ever since. I started for a catalog brand, actually. I like to tell people I babysat $40 million of e-commerce because it was primarily the catalog that drove it, but it was a really interesting opportunity. So I then moved to the agency for 10 years. I was at an agency called Ripen provided the strategy there for a decade. For those early in their careers, there's just no place like an agency that just gets you mileage so fast because you see so many different use cases out there. And then, after spending a literal decade in an agency, I was like, I want to get back on the brand side. And I went to a company called 4x400 that at the time we held 6 brands. And basically the concept was we bought really micro-sized brands with 100,000 or less in trailing 12 months revenue. And we rapidly scaled them to a couple million in revenue and, profitable. In the last 2 years or so, we wound down that holdco idea and sold off all the assets except for Bambu Earth. And I moved into Bambu Earth as the president there, and I run the day-to-day operations of Bambu Earth. It was just far and away our best brand. And it was clear that time spent on the other brands was really stealing from the best asset. And so since doing that, we were able to scale it up to an 8-figure brand. And Bambu Earth is a natural skincare brand, and we, our primary channel is direct to consumer. We've branched a little bit into Amazon and are starting to look at some retail expansion, but are primarily direct to consumer first.
Amazing. Quite the career. Seasoned veteran at this point.
That's right.
Seasoned veteran. I like what you said about the agency side. Obviously, being an agency owner, I totally agree with you. I mean, 10 years is a heck of a stint at an agency unless you're the founder. But I agree. You're exposed to so much. It's a very quick learning curve. And I think that really helps propel your knowledge and understanding of the space.
Agreed. I went from pretty much entry level, not, a little bit above entry level to executive level in my time there. And I'm president of the brand, but I still have my hands in so many tactical things because it's just very easy for me to do it because I spent that, that stint there. For those looking long-term to be in brands, it really gives you an incredible tool set to be able to do that.
Now in your role, Bambu Earth, president, COO, skincare is such a competitive space. It varied a little bit, but the data I was seeing was over 4,500 skincare brands in the US, which is a lot. A lot. I don't know whether that's all of them, and I'm sure varying degrees of revenue, right? But within such a competitive landscape, how do you really think about diversification and standing out in the market? And then one thing I'd love your take on, because, we work with some skincare brands and have some history there, is it's relatively consumer transient in so much as, and I base this a little bit on the fact that I have, okay, she's only 13, but a 13-year-old daughter. And there's no brand loyalty. It's just I want as many of the different products as possible. Like, even my girlfriend's cosmetic bag, there isn't just one brand. Whereas myself, I have one brand that I use for my skincare routine, and I'm not going to diversify. Kind of reframing the question a little bit, how do you try and differentiate market, or what's worked for you in differentiation, and what are you seeing when it comes to skincare products and just that transient nature of consumers?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing you brought up. And I think that's even more likely in the pure beauty space and like in makeup. That is even more significant degree that people are willing to try out several and use several. And I will say that we do know from survey data that people will, we sell very often a 2-week kit. So a little trial kit that lasts you 2 weeks and another kit that lasts you about 3 months. And so you sell somebody a 2-week kit and you what would you expect the repeat time period to be on? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, by 4 weeks, it's like, well, are you using it? What are you doing? But a really interesting thing is that we get a lot of, oh, I loved it, but I'm finishing my existing moisturizer, or I'm finishing my so like they have to use product they already have, and that plays into like the time frame that they repeat on your product, even if they love you, because they're not just going to throw out the $200 that's sitting on their counter just because they started with you. But the really interesting thing is that I think there's a couple of reasons why there are 5,000 brands in skincare. And honestly, that number might be understated. I mean, you look at like TikTok shops and it's like, I feel like I could spot 1,000 new brands on TikTok shops. There's a couple of reasons why is like the barrier to entry is like basically nothing. You can make skincare products in your home. You could go buy the raw ingredients. You can make them in your home. And that's our founder, Amber, started by doing this in her aunt's kitchen. So, 8-9 years ago, she started by doing this in her aunt's kitchen. And so the number of competitors in any given industry is almost always dictated by the barrier to entry. Like if you had to be FDA approved, boom, like moisturizer with SPF, how many competitors are there? I don't know, 100. It goes from 5,000 to 100 because there's a big barrier. There's a $100,000 barrier to get to the point where you can sell that. That's actually a generalized lesson you can kind of take across business. If you want fewer competitors, move into something that has a barrier to entry or figure out a way to erect a barrier to entry. So that is one thing to speak about in skincare. The other one is that it's typically high product margin. I call it the goop, the goop in the bottle. That's not the expensive part of the business, right? And so you can get the goop in the bottle pretty cheap, low barrier to entry, high margin if you can convince people to buy it. And if you can make a really good product that works for people, there's a high repeat rate or high lifetime value. So all three of those things make skincare terribly attractive. But what that means is that you have an absolutely cutthroat marketing job ahead of you. And I think that I've heard this several times and I've repeated this several times. In business, if somebody tells you that XYZ is easy, it's just printing money, typically a lie. It's all hard. You're all market exposed, right? You're exposed to the market. You have to beat people in the open market. It's hard. In e-commerce, you're competing in a national or even global market. It's very hard. It's a lot harder than opening a barbershop and being able to make it because you're competing against the 2 barbershops down the street. I'm competing against the 5,000 brands, the 5,000 upstarts, and I'm doing it on a ruthlessly efficient global market. And so in business, you have to choose your difficult, choose your hard. As an agency founder, scale. Scale is a hard thing in service businesses. That's your hard. That's what you picked. In my business, my hard is convincing people that skincare is going to work for them. And that's a good alignment because I have 15 years experience in marketing and in digital marketing. And it's good alignment with my skill set and choosing the hard that I want in business. I meandered for like 2 minutes, so I apologize if I lost the original thread of the question. But I think that explains some of the competition, why it exists, and why we don't mind being in that kind of an industry.
I think that's a perfect response. You gave a better answer than the question warranted, to be honest with you. So I like that. And you made a really good point there that I'm really keen to lean into is you're not the first person to either go into a brand or run a brand or start a brand that has or comes from digital marketing experience, right? And I think there's more and more of that happening. And it is like the shiny object concern sometimes. I run an agency. I'm part of brands. I've never gone the full TBD for this year of starting my own from scratch because they're very different skill sets, right? I think maybe the way that you got into Bambu, there was some form of legacy, and it was really to try and scale that. But digital marketing experience, especially these days, obviously with DTC brands, it's a competitive leg up, especially when you're not having to outsource to agencies and try and find the right agency fit for you and everything else. So talk a bit more about I'm always interested in the marketing philosophies as much as the tactics, because I think we often know the tactics, but what's some of the grounding philosophies that have helped you scale Bambu at 8-figure mark?
One other thing that I will say about this is that my understanding of it is constantly evolving. And I've been 2 years full-time in Bambu Earth and at least 2.5, if not 3 years, involved in it in some way. And I'm still changing my view on exactly what it means to succeed in skincare marketing. And there's some people who talk about Matt Bertelli from Lomi. He talks about seasons in business. And he says, a season is 10 years. Like, if you're going to go do something, choose something that you're happy to be doing for 10 years. That's pretty eye-opening because I'm, like I said, 2 years in and I feel like I'm still having significant unlocks in terms of the way I view the marketing and the way my inputs affect the outputs at a philosophical level. A few things that were kind of unlocks to me are people talk a lot about like selling benefits versus features. And that's like generally a true thing in marketing overall. Some people can get like over the top on it. And it's like, you're selling a gaming PC and you start to try to sell the benefit of being an esports gamer and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is a gaming PC is commoditized by features. And it's extremely easily comparable at a feature level. And for you to be able to like kind of break free from that and I had a gaming PC client, this is funny, to be able to break free from that and then talk about lifestyle or like esports or like some aspirational aspect too, or like you seeing your future self in that purchase. Like, okay, well, how much RAM does it have? What's the card? Is it a solid state drive? Like there's so many particulars that are easy to commoditize the value of it based on that feature set. Whereas skincare is very much the opposite. It's like, oh, what's in your product? Okay, we have shea butter, we have this. Nobody looks at an ingredient list and then goes, oh, you should be a $12 product. Why are you charging $22? Or you should be this. They may push back and say, $32 ain't worth it for this thing because I can get this cheaper. But at the end of the day, when people push back on price in skincare, the main reason for that is that they do not believe the effect. If they believe the promised effect, they're extremely price inelastic. Because if you went up to a 45-year-old woman and said, what would you pay if you knew you could do a skincare routine every night and guaranteed have fewer wrinkles, softer skin, more elasticity, the number would be very high. It would be higher than what women pay for skincare, right? Because if you remove the doubt and you really said, here's the benefit, and this is your future self, and you could realize it for just this payment. So the delta between what you're selling and what they're willing to pay for it, you can close that by making them believe. And so it just becomes an exercise in fitting the right solution to the right person. Okay, you have this, you're looking for this. Here, this is the right thing. So sort of a merchandising or matching to a target audience. You have under eye circles, let's match you to this. You have wrinkles, you have, whatever it might be. And then proving that you're really going to realize these benefits, that's ultimately what justifies the price. The industry that you're in matters a lot because, like I said, gaming PCs, if you tried to do that and you got stuck in this idea that like it's a lifestyle thing or whatever, you'd have a hard time because those specs do just get compared, apples to apples. It's a more sort of commoditized product type, whereas skincare is not. And that is a big unlock to just think about, what we want to charge versus what the customer wants to pay. The difference is them believing that it's going to work. Primarily.
With that and limitations on claims and before and afters and things like this, because it makes total sense, like totally buy into and understands and agree with what you're saying. How do you do that in a way that doesn't get you in trouble through advertising regulations, but also is impactful enough to have that consumer kind of cognitive response to price and what it's going to be able to do for them?
Correct. And there's the other challenge, by the way, of being in skincare marketing is there's 5,000 brands out there and 4,700 of them ignore regulations, and you still have to compete with them.
Yeah. And they're the ones that don't get the ads rejected, but yours do.
Right, of course. And so that is definitely a challenge because there's 4,500, 90% of the competitor list doesn't understand that they're making medical claims or all sorts of different claims and is just super direct, reduces wrinkles. And it's like, can't say that. Cures acne. Oh my God, that's a medical claim. That's not just a cosmetic claim. It's literally a medical claim. That is the biggest challenge. And one of the places that we've found best combats that. So there's two things that combat that or have been very effective in this. And we're investing in other areas I believe are also going to be, in fact, effective in this. So we actually are doing like a research study that will allow us the ability to make research-backed claims. So we'd be able to say, reduces wrinkles, and then, 93% of study participants saw reduction in wrinkles. That's not a real claim yet, but that's like the kind of claim that we're hoping to be able to get out of this kind of a study. And so you have to go to an independent lab for that sort of thing. And then actually after that, you even talk to like lawyers that specialize in these kinds of claims. And you basically show them your copy and they'll say high, medium, low risk. Here's how to make a high risk sentence into a low risk sentence. And it's very semantic driven. It is. And that, by the way, is interesting to think about because that's a way you get operational leverage. Like it's a fixed cost to do that. And that's why every large beauty skincare company does it, because it's ultimately a fixed cost to produce that. And then I'm L'Oreal and I have a literal $1 billion budget and it is, $100 million ad spend budget, whatever it is. And that fixed cost of proof is amplified over $100 million budget. And so there's an extreme amount of leverage at the high end and an extremely low amount of leverage for a rinky-dink brand to pull out $15,000 just so that they can make a good legal claim is like, well, that's pretty difficult. Or $50,000 if you're doing a clinical study. So that's the sort of thing that just simply gets better with scale, those kinds of claims. The other thing that is possible just right from the get-go is really authentic customer testimonials and footage. And so we call that CGC or customer generated content. And we've leaned heavily on, flows and stuff that collect that from our customers. And over the years compiled that through kind of the serendipity of what they say and the clips that we get back. Literally a new clip can unlock, the ability to go reach a new area and address a new problem because you now have a clip that supports that in a way that you didn't before. One of the ways that I am trying to be more intentional, invest directly in that is to, we have a skin quiz where everybody comes in and they fill out a, 20 something question quiz and they give us tons of rich data. And so I'm now starting to push back out to that audience and run my own in-house studies and collect more controlled content, both from before and after type stuff, as well as some efficacy stuff. Would you say you're very happy with this? And that we can take percentages of people that are very happy with the results, as well as, more controlled video type environments. I'm spending money that is somewhat of a fixed cost. And then, I spend $300,000 a month on Meta ads. So I'm able to apply that to a significant scale, and hopefully I can get to $400,000 or $500,000 a month. And so that fixed cost is then pushed out at an even bigger and bigger scale. And as that goes up, my ability to spend that fixed cost continues to go up. And so my ability to pursue better and better assets there just gets better and better.
I like that. The CGC, so customer generated content, not UGC, not AGC. We love to make these acronyms. We love to, it's like we're splitting the atom the way that we start with UGC and then, so it's heavily leaning into actual customers. Are you doing traditional influencer marketing and user-generated content where it's more scripted as well, or do you really just rely on that authenticity of actual customers and building relationships with them that way?
We have tried the whole spectrum. So like you said, customer-generated content, we have a constant pipe of that coming in. We're constantly culling that footage and trying to get down to the good stuff that is the good testimonials that really support specific, you're going to see this kind of an out, or make people believe that. We're not explicit about it, it's sort of implicit. Here's a woman who had rosacea, and it's obviously cleared up quite a bit. UGC, where the main, so user-generated content, the main way we do that is like seeding in like an influencer type environment. And we have gotten back clips from that. And it's like in each area, you actually get different kinds of clips that work for you. And so CGC, we get those like testimonials that are like proof. In UGC, really interestingly, we get like lots of great application footage. Women that run beauty accounts do a great job of lighting it. They know how to take the video, like as far as cost is concerned, compared to you running that kind of a shoot is, a 10th, 20th the cost. So especially if you're small, that's a good place where you can get really good looking kind of B-roll application stuff, et cetera. We have done AGC where we reach out to some actors and they set up a phone at home and read some lines for us, apply some stuff for us. That's like CGC, but like way less authentic, but beneficial that you can like just script exact things. You could talk about problems and solutions. You could talk about existing solutions and yours as an alternative. So you can make, like, I use them very often for like a hook or a transition that you just can't get out of a customer's voice. And then lastly, this is an area where we're starting to push into more and more, is like what I would call more typical full-blown production of, let's go do a video shoot. Let's go do the lighting right. Let's go pay an actress, pick the right one, get her to do the lines, get her, and I honestly think that for us long-term, that's just going to replace all of actor-generated content, because it ultimately is just a better end product and is more polished. And again, same thing. I spend $15,000, $20,000 on a shoot. And if I spend this over a $300,000 budget, that's one cost. But if I spend it over a $500,000 budget, there's an operating leverage to that scale. And so that's a lot of what I've been thinking about, is those fixed costs that you sort of unlock your ability to go invest in. And those are ways you can kind of continue to fuel your marketing machine in ways that might not have been possible a year or 2 years ago.
That makes a ton of sense. I really like the way you're framing that up. The increase of your distribution capabilities against your fixed costs. And I think that's a really good thing for maybe younger brands to think about. Does it make sense to do the $15,000 video production if you're spending $10,000 on ads? Or does it more make sense to lean into some of that UGC, CGC type content to build you up to that point?
The last bucket I would put that I'm starting to think about more is talent. So like think like famous people, like really influencer or like recognizable. Again, like if you want, I mean, this is ridiculous, but if you want Beyonce in an ad, like Pepsi can go get Beyonce in an ad, right? Like they're going to just go spend, I don't know, $20 million and then put Beyonce in an ad. And that makes sense because, again, it's amplified over a $500 million advertising budget, right? And so like you can start to think of, this influencer or this celebrity, I could go do a celebrity deal with somebody for $500,000. I could, or equity or whatever. And at my current, last year, say we spent just shy of $4 million on advertising. Maybe we're going to spend $5 million this year. Okay, but when I start to get up to 8, 9, 10 million, spending $500,000 on talent and that 10 million is more efficient is another kind of fixed cost unlock. Do you think that talent that you're paying $500,000, that celebrity or macro level influencer, cares whether you're spending this over $5 million of ad spend or $10 million of ad spend? I mean, like, you know, occasionally there's some licensing things that do scale at some level with like the amount, but like ultimately to get their attention, you have to show up to the table with a certain amount of money in the bag. You have to be able to close the deal, right? And so that's a kind of like fifth bucket of a fixed cost that simply gets better with scale. And it's like, if I'm L'Oreal or whatever, why would I ever run something? Why would I not go pay, you know, whoever, whatever famous person aligns with, you know, whatever movie star, whatever aligns with what I'm pushing, whether it's aging or acne or, you know, oily skin or smooth skin, flawless skin. Why would I not go pay them? Because over my massive budget, it just makes sense. I do think it's important to kind of think about those like fixed costs. And as you move up, they become more and more attractive, you know, as you go.
Yeah, I love that. And it actually brings me into another kind of question that I wanted to get your thoughts on, because you somewhat answered it there and I love that approach, like the fixed cost versus the distribution size and everything. And you will have had this at your agency. We have it at my agency. You've probably gone through periods or stages of this with Bambu, but what a 5-figure brand going from a 5-figure to 6-figure to 7-figure to 8-figure to 9-figure. There's commonalities on the lower end, but it requires different stages of growth, which requires different things from a back-end operation standpoint, but this being more of a marketing podcast, we'll focus more on there. What are some of the key kind of moments of a brand's growth, right? And I typically see this as being the 6-figure to 7-figure to 9-figure. You've answered it in my mind in some of the things that you just mentioned about the macro influence or the macro kind of marketing aspect that creates the halo effect, your lower funnel, your downstream. Maybe give some of your takes or just experiences of what have been some of those unlocks and how that relates to how you need to start thinking about your marketing strategies differently when you're looking to go from 6 to 7, 8 to 9?
I'm going to put that in buckets in terms of the maturity of the acquisition. And like, it depends on your product, your market, and the total addressable market, what that winds up being with a dollar value. So let me explain a little bit. So initially you're at 0 or some amount, and actually a lot of companies are at 0 and don't know it. You know, they could be doing 500,000 online, and they're effectively at 0 in terms of digital marketing, because they might be, you know, a brand that does 5 million in retail and they're doing 500,000 online by the presence that they've built in retail, and they have essentially 0 acumen or ability to acquire profitably online. And so that very first stage is creating like a minimum viable funnel. And like you're familiar with like minimum viable product, but it is the point where you are able to extract more gross margin per 1,000 impressions that you serve on an ad than you are charged. So margin per 1,000 is greater than cost per 1,000. And like, I think about this primarily in like a meta ads way. You can also think about it, you know, if you're more of like a Google ads type person, or, you know, search, you can think about it as margin per click over cost per click. You're able to exceed the cost of the ad space and turn a profit. And whether you do that on a LTV basis or you do it up front, you know, it doesn't matter. But you've essentially crossed that line. And so that gets you to the table. That gets you to, I have a viable funnel. This is a profitable thing for me to run. Prior to that, all of the money you spend is in pursuit of creating that ongoing viable thing. And so that's going from 0 to something. And again, you know, you can go from 0 to, you know, 6 figures. You can go 0 to directly 7 figures. I had the brand that I ran at or 400 Modern Fuel. I went 0 to like 30 grand to 30 to 50 grand a month ad spend at like a 2 to 2.5. And so we were like pretty much immediately at a 7-figure run rate. And it was the cost of the product and, you know, the market fit, but I essentially had a single minimum viable funnel. Maybe I was a little bit better than that, but that's you know, the crux of it. So that would be like stage 1 is getting that minimum viable funnel. And the focus points on that are like, what does it take to convince somebody to buy? So there's a lot of like optimization on the ad level. And then what is the offering and price point and configuration of that offer that I need to make happen on my website in order for that to occur? And so that gets you to, like I said, some minimum viable level. Could be 5, 6, 7 figures, but it's somewhere there depending on your product and the amount of product market fit. To go from that to the next stage is, I would say, like a significant funnel fit. And so I don't have a sexy acronym for that, but I'm sure we can make up one later. So as a good example here, like you get to the point where like you're able to run. Like a good example was like I came in Bambu Earth after we were declining on advertising. We were basically not able to acquire customers profitably for about 6 months. I came in December, took over in the leadership role there. By January, I was able to spend about $100,000 at a 1.25, meaning 125K of new customer revenue over 100,000 spend. And that was not profitable in the first order, but it was profitable within, like 30 days or something like that. And then there was significant LTV behind that. So it made sense. And we got to a level of fit at that point. Like, and that was like still closer to the like minimum viable. I did some work on, we had some breakthroughs on the ads in terms of the hooks and the proof. So we got better customer videos. We got a better understanding of how to grab their attention and how to grab the right people's attention and frame it. And then the biggest unlock in that time period was we changed the offer on our skin quiz. And so we A/B tested the offer of what comes out of that unique kit that you purchase. And we were only selling a 2-week trial at the time. And I added the 3-month full size version, and overnight, no change in conversion rate and a 30% increase in AOV, which was actually about a 40% increase in gross margin because the bigger kits were more profitable. Overnight, we went from spending about $125 a month to spending over $300,000 a month, like that. Like I said, there were some breakthroughs on the ad level, like the hooks, the proof, but that mean like, oh, you're sending the same traffic here and capturing 40% more value. So you think about it at the low end, early stages of that fit. Oh, what if I was just 40% better? Wow, that's like an enormous change. And what a lot of new marketers don't digest is a 40% better bid on Meta, and maybe it was a 30% better bid and I took a little bit more money up front, which is actually what happened. But a 30% better bid on Meta doesn't mean a 30% increase in advertising. In this case, it meant that my volume tripled. It went from 100,000 to 300,000. Because you're at the cusp of a lot of volume, you were just outside your ability to pay for it. And so very often, those kinds of gains can have really outsized results. Since that point, I've edged that I've had another win that was about 10%, another win that was about 5%. So ultimately, this whole thing is probably 50% more efficient at acquiring, pulling in gross margin dollars for everything I send to it. And maybe there are more unlocks there, but ultimately that's a diminishing returns. I can't go find another 40%, another 40%. Like at a certain point, your offer and the way you fine tuned it, et cetera, starts to run out, which brings you to the next bucket. And so in bucket 2, we could still be talking about better proof as a company. You could upscale your assets. It could be something crappy you shot with your phone. And you can kind of see it, it works. Then you go do a video shoot and pay, a great actor to read it. And, oh, wow, these are really, crunching now. I've seen a couple brands be able to do that. Although sometimes I see them also pay for those assets and they do worse than the phone version. But so there's all those kind of like funnel improvement things in that phase. And then that next phase is to be able to go do that all over again. And what I mean by that is like, we primarily cracked aging. Like that's the main funnel. We talk to women about, aging, wrinkles and fine lines and premature aging and all that. The next thing that we have to do in order to hit like a next level is go do that again for under eye concerns, for redness, for acne, for it. And I can now go jump to body. Now go jump to another product. A good example of this, if your listeners are active on Twitter, is Ridge. Ridge and Simple Mono are a great example of this. Ridge had a wallet business, was able to grow it to a certain scale. They added pens that added a little bit. They added rings, and it overnight changed their business. And then they added watches, and that overnight changed. And now they added luggage, and it's gonna go change. And so like, not only have they gotten 0 to like a minimum viable funnel on a product and then got that funnel to a mature point, they're now able to go do another funnel of a completely net new product that is bringing people in. And I think I'm simplifying this a little bit, but like, I would say those are like 3 major stages of your ability to just take something from 0 to 9 figures. You're really essentially repeating those 3 steps, at least from an acquisition standpoint. There's other things you could do on a retention standpoint, but on an acquisition standpoint, those are like the major buckets I would kind of put company stages in.
That's really interesting the way that you broke that out. And I think you've aligned it to products. So the funnels per product. And I've kind of seen this, and maybe it's not the biggest leaps all the time, but definitely gains to be made of different consumer segments. Depends on the product. and the brands. But I remember back to an example, we were working with a home fitness machine, and we were able to get to a point of having 3 very separate funnels for 3 very different types of consumers, whereas previously they'd have been trying to like everyone can have it. Which led to no specificity within the marketing. So yeah, I think that's a really great framework that you broke out of how that aligns to overall growth and how that can be replicated on products, but I also think replicated on different consumer segments within either a single product or multiple products within the brand as well.
I 100% agree with you. I would actually think problem or consumer need first, and then there are times where you have to fit a new product set to that. Also, there are times when you could take existing product set and fit additional needs or problems. And then that's actually the first step with us, is we have a skincare solution that can do other things. And so for us to build out the proof on those other ones, that's my focus of the next 1 to 2 years, at least from a digital marketing perspective, is go build those proof in other problem areas and scale those, go get 3, 4, 5 in that area. And if you can do that, then your ability to introduce new product and go do that is even more replicable. And then you could go push into even further areas and et cetera. But, I can't take, unless I have extreme amounts of product market fit, I can't take this one problem solution and go scale this up to 9 figures. Like that's probably not going to happen. No matter how fine-tuned I get it, it's likely that I'm going to need to go learn how to do this again and again. So it's kind of like, congratulations, you got the work done, pat yourself on the back, and now go figure out how to do number 2, and number 3, and number 4. So it's kind of like back to work in a sense. Sometimes entrepreneurs lose sight of that, and that's when you start to like kind of hit a ceiling in terms of what your business is capable of growing to.
You posted recently about channel diversification. I think I saw it on LinkedIn. But a couple of people on this podcast, maybe heightened, and it's not so recent now, but post iOS 14, everyone was saying Meta didn't work anymore. So everyone jumped onto TikTok, then jumped back. Maybe you're jumping again. There's Pinterest. There's a lot of channels. There's a lot of areas for you to disperse capital when it comes to distribution and growth. And I'm keen for your take on that in terms of when is the right time and at what points should you be looking to diversify your marketing channels?
As a broad generalization, I would say it's better to do it from a position of strength than a position of weakness. And what I mean by that is if you talk to people that have successfully expanded their media mix, it's when things are going well and they had an expendable budget that they could dedicate to unlocking a channel. So I'm going to go unlock YouTube or YouTube Shorts. I'm going to go bring $30,000 to that channel, and I'm going to be ruthless about getting a return for it. But ultimately, that's money that I'm just writing as an expense to testing this channel. And it is not ROI responsible yet. Like that's the position you want to be in when expanding a media mix. Now, obviously, things happen and you're not always necessarily in that kind of position. But again, you want to be in that position because you're setting up that experiment to succeed. You're setting up that experiment for its best chance to succeed. I think generally speaking, so when things are going poorly, what's happening? You're no longer market competitive in your preferred channel, meaning you're having trouble keeping up with the costs of that channel. So CPM is rising faster than MPM, margin per thousand. Cost per thousand rising faster than margin per thousand in the channel that you've put years of work into. Presumably, right? So now what makes you believe that your margin per thousand is now going to just simply be better in another channel, in a position of desperation, right? Like where it has to work kind of thing. And that's why I think that it is often chased for the wrong reason. So like rising costs is probably the worst reason to go diversify from a media mix, because what rising cost means is that you're not rising your margin extraction fast enough, because that's ultimately what this is. It's a competitive marketplace. It's an open market where you're bidding against other people who are rising their margin extraction of that audience faster than you, full stop. So if you're just going to go jump to another channel, that channel will eventually hit that point. It doesn't matter if there's an arbitrage moment on TikTok. In 6 months, you're going to be back in the same boat. And that's exactly what happened on those early days of TikTok. Oh, it's cheap. Boom. Within 12 months, it was expensive and everyone's media mix went back to Meta. And so I think that's just a framing that I think is useful, is like, do it from a position of strength, focus on how you can create the best margin extraction of attention. And then when that's winning, go and try to figure out how that gets applied to another channel. And distribution channels is similar. So like, I'm going to go sell retail or Amazon or whatever is similar. You want to approach that from a position of strength. But I would always say I would prefer as an operator, if you're in a down period, is to stabilize what you have, get it to the point where this is an ongoing, like maybe you have to carve the business down. The business was doing 5 million, now it's 3. Carve down your OpEx, find your way to profitability, push hard on trying to get that back to 3.5, 4, whatever. But this is your normal, and buy yourself the runway and time to go do something else well, and money. Because if you don't, and you're doing it, we used to do 5, now we're doing 3, and we're burning cash, and now let's go look at YouTube or TikTok or retail or whatever, you're in a spot where you're setting yourself up for failure. And so I think it's less about when you should from a brand maturity perspective and more about the motivations behind and the tools you have going into that, tools and time that you have.
Couldn't agree more. That's a great response. I think that, it's that sort of thing that I think is really helpful for maybe younger marketers or younger brand founders who are like, I should be everywhere. I should be on TikTok. I should be on Meta. I should be testing this. I should be on all these different channels. And I think, time and time again, it's to your point, maybe the wrong motivation or the wrong time for the brand to be doing it. So yeah, totally agree. Dave, I could talk to you for hours. I'm honest with you. I've really got to stop doing this. I preface the end of every bite-sized of, I try and keep them snackable, and it's just, it's not working. But to kind of wrap things up, and we might have a separate session because we've done lots of acquisition focus. We've not even touched upon retention, which is the whole other side of marketing and brand and building a sustainable brand. But I'm really keen to kind of end things on, what are some of your biggest predictions for 2024? It's a new year. Last year was choppy when it came to kind of the consumer index, and there was macroeconomic headwinds and all of that fun stuff. But a lot of people largely got things wrong. What are some of your predictions for 2024?
Difficult. It's always difficult to predict the macro. The one thing I will say is that, especially if you were a 6, 7, even low 8-figure brand, that you have the benefit of being able to grow faster than whenever the macro shrinks. And so for the most part, you should close your eyes and just go execute. And, consumer softness is mostly an excuse. If you have that one funnel and you add a second funnel and consumer demand tanks 20%, you won't even know. It's just, you're small enough that you can outgrow that. When you're a $500 million butcher box, okay, you can complain about macro. But for the most part, you should just close your eyes and not think about it. And so that's what I should tell everyone that's 6, 7, 8 figures and, or low 8 figures, I should say, upper, maybe you can complain a little. I do think that consumer sentiment is going to improve this year. I think that money will get a little bit cheaper. I think we're looking at some rate cuts, 75 to 150 basis points is my guess, and starting in April. So that would be my macro environment guess. The cost side, though, is in the fall, we have it's an election year, and CPMs are going to suck and attention is going to suck. Buckle up. But again, I'm going to say, look, $2 billion gets injected into the system. It's actually a 2% change over, Meta takes in 100 billion in a year. And so I think 34 billion in Q3 or something like that, right? So, okay, say $2 billion is injected there. So 5 or 6% change. If you're 6, 7, 8 figures, you can outgrow it. Just hammer now on outgrow it. That's what I'm trying to do. Outgrow it. And that's your, issue guidance to your shareholders that it's an election year. Just try to outgrow it.
I like that approach. And what are you most excited about for Bambu outside of outgrowing the challenges?
We are at a point where, we've cracked that one funnel, gotten it to pretty mature, got to the low 8-figure mark. And I'm really excited to go figure out how to do number 2, 3, 4, and to build those proof points and kind of build these new systems necessary. And that's where my whole year's kind of lining up to be. And so it's fun, new, exciting, challenging. And, hopefully I'm up to the challenge on it.
I'm sure you will be. Dave, really appreciate your time. Really enjoyed listening to just your takes on things and how you break things down. I did preface at the beginning, super smart. I love that, it's grounded in philosophies and understanding of actual numbers and data and everything else, and not just the shiny tactics. So really enjoyed talking to you today. Really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on.